Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Blue Line Blast podcast. Biringer and Matthew Blittner back again after a week off. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about here today on our new episode. Second episode here up on YouTube. Get it all around your streaming platforms as well. Also, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Matthew, welcome back again. Glad to be doing this.
Great to be back after a week in COVID protocol. The Devils weren't the only ones who were banged up after the end of their season, but we'll get into their injury issues and everything. But of course, we got to start with the big news. It's been just about an hour since the NHL draft lottery kicked off. So probably about half hour since we received the big news. The New York Islanders, they move up 10 spots to win the 2025 NHL draft lottery. And Jim, I'm not one to be a conspiracy theorist. I'm not one to ever point fingers or, dive into that particular part of things. But let's look at the facts. The Islanders, back in February of 2024, announced, along with the NHL, that they were going to be hosting the 2026 All-Star Game before the league was going to be going off to the Olympics. That's a fact. That is what we know. Okay. Then Four Nations came about in February 2025, and everyone started talking about, you can't go back to a regular All-Star format because, it's just the excitement of the Four Nations. You just can't do it. But the league said, no, we're still going to have an All-Star thing. Maybe we'll tweak the format, but we're still going to have that. Again, this is all facts. Then, about a week ago, Gary Bettman announces that there will not be an All-Star game at UBS Arena prior to going off to the Olympics. He is hemmed and hawed. The league is hemmed and hawed, saying, well, it's going to be an international event. It's going to be a kickoff event. Who the heck knows what an international kickoff event means or entails? The best knowledge that we've been told so far is that it is not going to be a hockey event. So why should fans even care about this? It is basically a cash grab. But okay, fine. Again, these are all, now we're starting to delve into speculation. But then tonight, with, 3.5% odds?
Yes.
Like the Islanders win the draft lottery to draft first overall. And, there's two or three different players who they could potentially go for. I know Matthew Schaefer is the popular pick, but of course, if you ask people on Long Island, James Hagens, the Long Island kid from Hop Pod, who is the lifelong Islander fan, who was the presumed number one pick up until about 2 months ago, he's also a popular pick to have. And what a story it would be. But Jim, they take away the draft, they take away the All-Star game. They come up with some, ambiguous event, and then the Islanders turn around and win the draft lottery. I don't know. It smells fishy.
So what you're saying is, if it looks like a fish, sounds like a fish, it's definitely a fish, then, right?
If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Right. So look, I hear what you're saying. Look, I'm not one to buy into conspiracy theories. I'm gonna be honest, but the pieces and the puzzles are there, right? Because remember, we were both there. It was at the Stadium Series. That MetLife, they were playing the Rangers. They made this whole big deal, like you said. All-Star games coming to UBS, new arena, whole 9 yards.
They've been selling tickets to it to even ticket holders.
Yeah, exactly. You have everything set up, and then all of a sudden, we have this Four Nations thing. And it wasn't so much the NHL that was talking about the All-Star stuff. It was the outside media. They're like, well, how can you go back? You kind of put the damper on all these All-Star games because the NBA All-Star game was flat. Look, we know the NHL All-Star Game isn't the greatest. We know they're going back to the Olympics, which was a kind of a head-scratcher to say they're still doing this this All-Star Game or All-Star event prior to the Olympics because they never did All-Star Games with the Olympics before or recently with the last 2 times that they went because they had done it in the past. But then it's like, okay, so what are you going to do? You're just going to have the players go there that are going to the Olympics, sign autographs, wave to the fans, and then they're going on planes because they're all going to want to get to Milan right away after the season stops and the season pauses. So what are we doing here? And I think, and this is where the conspiracy theories can run wild. To be like, look, hey, well, they're taking this away. Governor Kathy Hochul is hooting and hollering about, hey, how come we're not getting this All-Star game? What about in 2027? And the league still doesn't know what they're going to do after this, right? I've talked to Steve Mayer. He's even said, he's like, oh, we don't know. I mean, we have to look at these odd years because the international calendar is being reset because you're going World Cup, Olympics, World Cup every 2 years. What are you going to do in between? Can't do 4 nations every year because the guys will just be beat up all the time. But the All-Star game is what the All-Star game is. And, personally, in my opinion, I always thought they should go international versus the world for this thing with the Olympic players because it would be fun. But no one's going to care, like you said. Like, why would I want to go to just some event? Like, okay, well, the guys are playing for real soon. So there's definitely something to it. Do I buy it 100%? No. But I can see where people are coming and say, hey, wait a minute. Islanders, they're kind of getting screwed out of this All-Star game, but we'll throw them a bone with the first overall pick, something they haven't had since they drafted John Tavares.
Right, and look, they drafted Tavares in 2009. That was the last time they had the first overall pick. They've had the first overall pick 4 times prior in their history. So they had Tavares, they had Rick DiPietro, they had, I saw Andrew Gross tweeted it out before. They had, let's see, who else did they draft?
Right, 80s, right?
Let's see. Why am I drawing?
Oh, Dennis Potvin and Billy Harris were the other 2. I just found a tweet from Andrew Gross.
Right. So they've had 4 awesome number 1 picks. I mean, you can question about Rick DiPietro, but now all of a sudden they get to have this again. Whether they go with the Long Island story with James Higgins or not, we'll see. It seems like it might actually be more Matthew Schaefer, but now it makes everything so much more interesting because the Islanders are looking for a president of hockey ops. They're looking for a GM. Maybe that'll be one and the same. Maybe it'll be 2 separate people. We don't yet know. But now you have to think that this has become like the NHL roads go through Long Island now. You've got the draft lottery, the number 1 pick is going to go to the Islanders. You've got them wanting, trying to get a new head honcho or 2 to run hockey ops. They're going to build out the hockey ops department because they had the smallest hockey ops department in the league under Lou Lamoriello. And, I mean, if Islander fans, and they were, so there's no if, Islander fans have been very vocal about not being pleased with the direction of the team. This has to be nothing but a win-win-win all around. Like, they're not going to be tailgating, partying in the streets over this, but it's going to be pretty damn close.
No, I agree with you. I think because, look, you're getting Callum Ritchie in that deal from Brock Nelson, right, at the trade deadline, which Lou Lamoriello started the trend to getting younger. And he talked about that before, they decided not to renew his contract. They said, hey, we need to get younger, we need to get faster, we need to bring in some goal scoring. And that's been the hooting and hollering from Islander fans for the last couple of years. Where's our goal scoring? How come we're not getting any younger, right? And the big thing to me is if you look at it, they have it now. Cole Eiserman's there. They're going to grab either Michael Schaefer, James Hagan. Most likely it's going to be Schaefer, which is fine because you add another piece on that blue line, which is going to be just unbelievable, right? And then you also have, like, Danny Nelson's in there. Barzal, Horvat, Sorokin. Like, and maybe we don't know what the future holds for Noah Dobson, but they have a nice young nucleus now. Something that if Lou Lamoriello took the time to do early on after those back-to-back conference finals, maybe the Islanders aren't in this position, but they needed to be because they needed to get younger. They needed to bring in a number 1 pick again. They needed to get back to what they were. And now, maybe they could speed up that rebuild or retool a la Washington, like what they're doing. So the key is nailing this GM and president of hockey ops, which it sounds like it's going to be 2 different positions. And I'm not sure they should go down the same old road of these guys that, like, let's be honest, like, I think they should be looking at guys that have been inside organizations that have a winning, path. Not the same old guys like the Bergevins and the Hollands, because maybe the league has just passed some of these guys by.
I'll agree with you. The league has passed some of these guys by, But with what we're hearing out of our sources, what we're hearing out of people from Long Island, what with John Collins being in charge of the search along with John Ledecky and Scott Malkin. I'm not saying Bergen or Holland are going to be one or both of the people, but one of them is almost definitely going to be in some sort of position, whether it's as an advisor, president of Hockey Ops, GM, just because the Islanders still then have to decide on Patrick Waugh's future. They have to rebuild Bridgeport, which was an absolute disaster, which is not even a strong enough word. If you're going to have this young nucleus coming through, you have to be able to develop them properly. And you can't do that if Bridgeport is a disaster. So you need people who are the quote-unquote safe pick. Maybe it's not the flashy, sexy pick, but you need a safe pick for one of the two positions of president of Hockey Ops or GM. And then you can have a dynamic, sexier pick for the other position. But you have to have a safe one just because, look, the draft is in, 6 weeks? 5.5, 6 weeks?
Yep.
You can't go into that still needing a head coach and a coaching staff, because then you have free agency 3 days later, 2 days later.
It's something like that, yeah.
You can't go into that completely dynamic. You need someone who is a steady hand, even if it's only going to be transitional. Even if they said to Ken Holland, let's say, listen, Kenny, we love you, but we're only going to have you here for 2 years. You're going to be the president of Hockey Ops. You're going to bring in a dynamic young GM. You're going to train him up. And then in 2 years, we're gonna give you the Glenn Sather treatment. You're not even going upstairs. You're just gonna be like a senior advisor who will call from time to time. But we're gonna hand the reins over to that guy, and then we'll also bring in someone else to be a president. That's not, maybe they do something like that. But in here and now, they have to, and as important as it is to nail the picks, they have to have someone who's a steady hand to help them nail the dynamic part. So if you go too dynamics, there's a high chance of it backfiring.
No, I agree with that. Like, look, there's just some guys that I've looked at some research on, and some guys out in that LA system that have done some great drafting and developing. And, I know they haven't won out in LA since 2014, but they've put the cornerstone pieces in with some nice drafting. And I think that's what the Islanders have to do, is get back to drafting, because they just haven't done enough of it, and they kept their young players there. Like you said, disastrous doesn't even describe the words of Bridgeport. Like, there's probably even better adjectives to describe what's going on down there. Because let's be honest, like, Lou just didn't look at it, and his son Chris Lamorello ran it, and the problem is Bridgeport just didn't have the prospects to compete, and you're not bringing up the talent there. And I agree with you 100% on this. You need a coaching staff, GM, everybody in place by that draft. You cannot do what the Edmonton Oilers did come July 1st and let the president and CEO of the team be making hockey decisions for the betterment of the team before putting a GM in place. And then you had Stan Bowman and the offer sheets happen, and everything went in whack. Now the Oilers are in the second round of the playoffs, and everybody, doesn't matter. You still shouldn't have, you should not have a general manager in place. You need one. You can't go into July 1st and the draft not having a guy in place. So I think they're going to get that figured out soon.
Here's what I would do. And this is no joke, okay? If I was John Collins, John Ledecky, and Scott Malkin, here's exactly what I would do in regards to everything. One, I hire Ken Holland on a 2-year deal to be the president of Hockey Ops, with the acknowledgement that after 2 years, he becomes a Glenn Sather-like advisor, which I've already said. I reach out and I get Kevin Weeks to sign on as a GM. Weeks has interviewed for GM positions across the league before. He is very well respected in hockey circles. His hockey mind is second to none. I could go on and on, but it would sound like I'm carrying the flag for him, and I don't want to make it seem like that. But Kevin Weeks, absolutely the future GM. And it's close enough, where it wouldn't probably disrupt his family life at all. I'd absolutely hire him as a GM. keep Patrick Waugh for a year because there's too many teams looking for head coaches right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only going to be retread head coaches. Keep Patrick Waugh as head coach for another year, and then determine, it's not Stanley Cup or bust. 2025-26 is not Stanley Cup or bust for the Islanders.
No.
And then down in Bridgeport, what I would do is I would have Holland and Weeks find that dynamic next, that future guy who, maybe 5 years from now is an NHL GM, but right now he's not. Maybe it's a guy down in Tampa. Maybe it's someone from the Steve Yzerman tree. We don't know. And let him be the assistant GM for the Islanders and the GM of the Bridgeport Islanders. And let that person run the show down there. And that's how I would build it up.
No, I think that's smart. You got to do things the right way. You got to get your AHL franchise intact. You got to have the right assistant GM running that team down there who's the general manager of the AHL. And look, I could be an advocate for Kevin Weeks too. I think he's a great hockey mind. I think he should be a GM in this league too. There's a lot of people that should be GMs in this league. And look, maybe one day he will be. And you never know. Maybe that leads to a role for him with a team. Because with his mind, I could see him running a franchise one day, not just as a general manager, but maybe even higher up. But
right, like Keith Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Like Jonesy. Like those guys, that tandem could work somewhere together. Like with a Weeks and somebody else that's in there. Because he knows the game so well, and he knows goaltending, and he just knows the players and how the game works. But the Islanders have to get this right, because if they don't, they could set their franchise back again, especially with a special talent coming in this draft.
Absolutely. And look, as I was about to say, with Weeks, no disrespect to Keith Jones, and, he's doing a fine job with the Flyers. Kevin Weeks is leagues above Keith Jones in terms of his ability to potentially run a franchise. So, if he wanted it, if the Islanders want, that's absolutely who should be their next GM. But what do I know? What do you know? We're just two reporters with close to 2 decades worth of experience of being around the league. So, we'll see what happens there. What I do want to say is we both happen to know, and we're going to shift topic, we both happen to know a franchise that is moving in the right direction right now because they finally do have some pieces in place, and that's the New Jersey Devils. And yes, you can say, well, the Devils were bounced in the first round, so, how good are they? But they've now been to the playoffs 2 times in the last 3 years after only going once in the span of 10 years. They have some core pieces in place. They got unlucky with injuries. Jack Hughes, shoulder surgery. Luke Hughes, now shoulder surgery. Jesper Bratt, now shoulder surgery.
Who saw that one coming, by the way? Real quick, who saw the Bratt one coming?
Not me.
No. I saw, wait a minute, Bratt has a shoulder? When did this guy get hurt? I knew about the Hughes brothers. I knew Jack and Luke definitely because, let's be honest, the injury that he sustained summer training before the end of the season, same shoulder. So now he has to have shoulder surgery on the injury that he got in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And they are heading in the right direction. They just ran into a better team, and injuries and all that aside. I mean, they still put up a valiant effort in a 5-game series, but they just ran into a better team and a team that just knows how to play against them.
Honestly, I don't even know that you can say Carolina is a definitive better team than the Devils. If the Devils were fully healthy, and yes, I know it all comes down to whoever's hottest and healthiest at the end. Devils were not healthy. Carolina was. So, okay. But if the Devils were fully healthy versus Carolina being who was fully healthy, I can see that series having gone a different way.
I'm still taking Carolina. I'm still taking Carolina based on one thing. The Devils can't win in Carolina in the playoffs. Not right now. That's the only reason I'm taking Carolina is because the playoff history tells me that Carolina at home and they know how to play against this team. I've seen it way too many times, and I saw it recently. Yes, we can point to 2023. Team was different, younger. First time in forever you've been in the playoffs. But Carolina knows how to shut down that neutral zone and that attack and that press attack. And when they keep coming and just comes in waves, New Jersey just didn't have an answer for it. They put up a great effort. And the only reason it went to double overtime in Game 5 is Jacob Markstrom stood on his head. That's the only reason it went to double overtime.
Yeah, well, look, The Devils, they still need some pieces. I'm not saying that they're.
Oh no, absolutely.
They still need some pieces. But a healthy Jack Hughes and a healthy rest of the lineup could have, not saying they would have, they could have made that a very different series. Because Carolina, yes, neutral zone trap and all that, but you still have to respect that elite talent. And, maybe they still shut them down. Maybe they don't. Who knows? We now know that Brendan Dillon, with the neck injury, Jonathan Kovacevic now is not going to be ready for next season, which is a big blow. But you know what? That gives Simon Nemec a chance to establish himself more.
Yeah,
So
no, I agree with that.
That's positive. And Seamus Casey is still waiting in the wings.
No, but look, Kovacevic with the injury that he had, right? Like, he took advantage of guys that were out injured, right? Luke Hughes. We knew Pesci and Hughes were going to get guaranteed spots in the lineup. But Nemec came in and he thought he was going to get a spot, and he didn't. And Kovacevic kind of took his spot away. And Casey kind of did his thing early in the season, too. But then, Nemec went back. He goes to the AHL. He develops. And he played really well in those games that he was called upon for, in the playoffs for the Devils. And he's getting more and more confidence. He's playing more and more minutes. He's got to bring that attitude in the summer training sessions and then bring that into the training camp, because nothing should be guaranteed for these kids, right? He's got a lot of work to do to still prove it, and he can prove it. And the Devils have something special in that kid, but again, they still need more, and you and I both agree. Like, look, now if Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes are in, maybe they get a power play goal. Maybe they get a special teams goal that they didn't get in the first round. This team needs to figure out a way to stay healthy. This team needs a way to find and score goals, because they have yet to replace Tyler Toffoli's production up in their top six. Yes, Timo Miner took steps, but this team needs to figure out a way to get a goal scorer to help out this team, because it's clear as day that if you can take away a couple of guys, they just don't have. They're a one-line team, and they need more.
They need another scoring center. They need two more scoring wingers, and they need a little bit more sandpaper is what they need. Defense, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I think that defensively, the players that they have in their D-core are going to be what can be built around. They need skill, but they need the sandpaper, which is always the age-old question, obviously, for a hockey team. You see the Rangers right now, they're saying, oh, well, we want to do more sandpaper over skill, but then if you do too much sandpaper, then you can't score. So there's always that fine line. And the Devils, they need to find someone. Obviously, Brady Tkachuk is not going to be available. Ottawa's not trading their captain. No. People can forget about that.
Yeah,
but, if you can find a player like that, or if you can find a player like a Mark Stone, obviously Mark Stone's not going to be available from Vegas. But, you mentioned Tyler Toffoli. He's that type of guy. There are players out there. I would see what it would cost to bring in Brock Nelson. Brock
Besser's out there too.
Yeah, I would bring in Brock. See about Brock Besser. Obviously, the elephant in the room is going to be Quinn Hughes in a couple of years. Maybe they can speed that up. How long is Jacob Markstrom going to be elite for? Considering that he's on the back nine of his career. But they are in position to do something special. What I would like to see out of the Devils is I would like to see a bit more of a active offseason from the front office and some tweaks in the coaching staff, not personnel-wise, but in terms of how they go about prepping their players. One thing that happened this One thing that happened this year, there were too many times where they just were not ready, and Sheldon Keefe said, we were not ready. That has to go, and that's on the coaching staff.
No, I agree with that 100%. Like, the coaching staff has to adjust better. Like, the effort was there in the last couple of games, but too many times still the lapses in the game, they allow those lapses to go into 1, 2, 3 goals, and then the game is over, right? There has to be a way. We got to slow this game down. Like, can't just let a team attack, because eventually pucks are going to go in the net. They have to figure out a way to clamp it down a little bit more, get pucks out of their own zone. I agree. The coaching staff has to get these players prepared a little bit better, because let's be honest, some of their starts in some of their games were not the best, and they're already trailing 1-2-0 before the period's even halfway over. that has to change. Guys have to be better prepared. And that's on everybody. That's not only on coaching staff, but the players taking it in when they hit the ice during warm-up, getting that mentality, that right mindset to go and get after it once the puck drops. Okay, here we go. Not start games when you're down 3-1 in the third period and all of a sudden you're making a comeback with 20 minutes left. I think the biggest thing is what we could take away from this entire season is consistency. Playing a consistent 60-minute game night to night. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from the season.
Absolutely. And, you talked about their starts, but there were a lot of times this year, and you saw it in the playoffs a lot too, with the Devils. They actually started fine, and then the script would flip, and then they would sit back, and then the other team would come and come and come,
yeah,
and the Devils would blow it, which you just saw, happen. There's no reason that game should have gone to double over, or should have gone to forget about double overtime. Shouldn't have gone
to overtime. Period.
And to transition further, we just saw that happen back-to-back nights in what was arguably one of the greatest weekends in NHL Stanley Cup playoff history. I mean, the St. Louis Blues sat back. The Colorado Avalanche sat back.
Yeah, can't do that. LA Kings did it against Edmonton in games 3 and 4.
Well, LA Kings, they just let go their GM today because
Rob Blake's out the door. They mutually parted ways, and I think a big part of it is the style that they played under Jim Hiller. Too many teams, too many. Look, you said St. Louis, you said Colorado.
Well, they lost straight to Edmonton. They lost 4 years in a row to Edmonton.
Can't do that. Can't sit back and let a team come after you the entire game, especially in the third period when you're dominating. Just can't. That can't happen.
Yeah, look, Colorado was up 2-0. Now, they have not won a Game 7 on the road ever. They've lost 7 consecutive Game 7, now 8 consecutive Game 7s. Pete DeBoer was 8-0, now 9-0. He is the all-time winningest coach when it comes to Game 7 victories in not only NHL history, but MLB history and NBA history. Think about that for a second.
And he doesn't have a championship to his name.
Which is even more remarkable.
Yeah.
But Colorado had a 2-0 lead. Okay, you expect Dallas to score 1, so it should be 2-1. Okay, let's call it where it is. So you're not going to shut them out in their building. 2-1, I don't think anyone expects it to remain the 2-0.
Right.
Rantanen, yes, he had the revenge game. He had the game of his life. He had the game that books are going to be written about for years to come. All that. It's going to be talked about for generations. But let's be honest. One of his second goal goes off the side of the net and then goes off the skate of the defender and in. Okay, unlucky bounce, Colorado, but how do you let yourselves even be put in that situation? And then Blackwood, who we saw in New Jersey plenty, how do you let that pass go through the crease on the power play for what ended up being the game-winning goal? You have to poke check that. You have to, or forget about Blackwood for a minute. One of the defenders has to not let that.
Yeah, the defenseman's got to be reading that play better. That's just that pass cannot happen.
Yeah, that pass cannot get through. And then, okay, so now it's 3-2. Ottinger stands on his head because they did put pressure. And then Rantanen, I mean, again, stuff of storybook endings. Gets the hat trick. But, that game was great. Holy moly, what a game in Winnipeg.
Holy crap. I mean, first of all, whiteout, Game 7. You're like, okay, well, all right, Rantanen back-to-back 4-point periods, hat trick in a period, ties Kevin LeBanc, does, 12 points, 11 points in the last 3 games. And you're like, okay, revenge game, Game 7. All right, can't top this thing. Oh, but we can because, Jets trail 3-1. They make it 3-2 on a goal, and then 1.6 seconds left in the third period. Cole Perfetti gets his second in the game. It looked like the way the Blues were playing, it was 2-0. You're like, okay, the Hellebuck, the story of Connor Hellebuck from the road is carrying over in the home. He kind of settles down, changes his style. Jets get within 1, but then they give up a late second period goal, and you're like, okay. But then the Jets find a way, feed off the crowd, Again, St. Louis trying to go for that empty net, couple of icings. Team is tired, can't get the puck out. Again, similar stuff to what we saw with LA. Similar stuff to what we saw with Colorado. Can't get the puck out of your own zone. Teams are able to take advantage of you being tired. And then, bam, what a play. Perfetti, redirection, tie game, place goes nuts. Winnipeg dominated the first overtime. There were chances that, St. Louis had, but Connor Hellebuyck played really well, strong and steady. Neil Pionk, what a great play. Again, St. Louis just looked tired. Dying seconds of that double overtime. Dying minutes, really. It was about like 4 minutes left. And boom, right off of Adam Lowry. I think he's officially credited with the game-winning goal. That could change in a couple of days. The place goes nuts. The Winnipeg Jets slay those demons. And it's just an unbelievable comeback. Down 2, force double overtime, win the game. I mean, what a great Game 7. I mean, what a great hockey weekend.
Well, so just to add some things to that, Winnipeg St. Louis was the 200th Game 7 in NHL history, okay? It was the first ever in Winnipeg. It was the 50th ever to go into overtime. But before we even get into overtime for a minute, Vladimir Mestikov takes it from 3-1, makes it 3-2.
Yeah.
With about 3 minutes to go, okay? About 2-3 minutes to go. Paul Perfetti almost scores. Goes to replay. They determine that the puck did not cross the goal line. Okay, so it's now still 3-2. Going into the final seconds. Perfetti again gets it on, and this time he does score. Puck crosses the goal line with 1.6. Sets off the celebration. Now they go into overtime again. 50th Game 7 out of 200. So 1/4 of Game 7s have now gone into overtime. The Winnipeg Jets dominate, as you said. From the second period on to the end of the game, the Winnipeg Jets outshot the St. Louis Blues by like 20. Okay, it wasn't even close. It was a complete reversal. There we were in the first period saying, they give up the first goal. Hellebuyck gives up the first goal, always being too aggressive. And then they give up the second goal 6 minutes later. It's like, you got to pull him. You have to pull him.
Yeah, exactly.
Pull him, thankfully. But now everyone's saying, oh, it's in his head. It's all in between the ears. He settles down, but he still looks a little shaky. He gets his revenge against Jordan Binnington. You and I were both there in Four Nations in Boston, in which Jordan Binnington outdueled him in the overtime. And let's be honest, Jordan Binnington outdueled him in this overtime too, because with the sheer amount of chances that the Jets put up. The St. Louis just didn't put up that many chances.
They didn't shoot the puck. They stopped shooting. Like, I'm looking at the stats. Winnipeg in the second period, 10-9. Okay, it was a little close there. But in the third period, 15-4, 11-4 in the first overtime, and then 8-5 in this double overtime. You're not winning games if you're going to put up 4 shots in a period. It's not going to happen. Like, they stopped shooting the puck. Jordan Kyrou stopped shooting the puck. They gave up so many chances to shoot the puck. And they've been in the guy's head all series long. And then in the moment when you need to shoot the puck, they didn't shoot the puck.
Yeah, and look, Neil Pionk was a horse. Okay.
46 minutes?
And here's the thing. I remember when Neil Pionk came up with the Rangers, okay, when they first sent out their letter, and he was he wasn't even a hyped up prospect. He was called up, and the thing was, well, he's got speed, he's got good hands, he can skate, he's got good vision, he's going to set up plays, but he's too small. They trade him away in the Jacob Trouba deal to bring Trouba to New York. How's that turning out for you, first of all, right now? Neil Pionk is, he gets his points every year. It's not like he's putting up 80 points a year. He's not. But Neil Pionk is one of the most underrated offensive defensemen in the NHL today. And you cannot change my mind about that. He absolutely, that did not surprise me what he did last night against St. Louis. It almost would have been poetic for him to score that goal, but Adam Lowry's pants got in the way. And I mean, look, good for Adam Lowry and his pants. I guess his seamstress, actually, for giving him enough width in the pants to be able to deflect the puck. So it didn't go off his stick. It went off the pants.
Hey, sometimes you better be lucky than good, right? I guess that's how the old saying.
But, it would have been so poetic for Neil Pionk to have scored that goal.
I thought he's the one that got it, and then I saw the replay, and I'm like, oh, it just nicked his pants. I'm like, I feel bad for Pionk because the way he played, because Josh Morrissey went down 2 minutes in, no Mark Scheifele, and, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets they just fed off that crowd, and they just played a team game, and heartwarming to see Rick Bowness and Adam Lowry talk after the game on TNT, because Rick Bowness is the guy that made Adam Lowry captain of this Winnipeg Jets team. This is the new standard that they put in for the Winnipeg Jets. They have a tough task, but as we've seen in these playoffs, it doesn't matter if you're missing your best forward, your best defenseman. You play as a team, and you never quit. I mean, everybody's talking about Dallas. Dallas knows that everybody was talking about Colorado, because they were missing guys. Winnipeg may have found something here. Connor Hellebuyck can carry over his play. The Jets may be doing some things this year. Again, it's going to be a tough task because no Mark Scheifele potentially and no Josh Morrissey for the series. It's going to be real tough.
Look, I'm still not 100% convinced that Winnipeg is going to go much further. I'm still not sold that Connor Hellebuyck has slayed his demons. The only way he'll prove that is if he goes down and has a dominant series. Win or lose. If he goes down and has a dominant series, then okay, he puts that to rest. But I'm reserving judgment on that. The curse of the President's Trophy, let's see, where it is. I think only 8 of 40 teams.
Yeah, it's not. And the last one was 2013 Chicago Blackhawks. So
the players talked about it. We know for a fact that the players talked about it. So that's going to be something to bear, watching. Right now, I want to get your thoughts right now, though, Jim.
Yeah.
And quickly, the second round is starting. And in fact, I believe puck has already dropped on the second round.
Yep.
Let's go series by series, just quickly. Who do we think's winning each series? And I'll let you start.
I think, obviously, everybody talks about Toronto being different. I want to see them be different. I still got Florida the defending champs until somebody beats that team and beats them in a 7-game series. The way they've been playing, I'm taking the Florida Panthers just because I think they're going to get there. And I'm going to take there's not a lot of belief in Washington right now, but I might not have the belief either, but I think Florida and Carolina meet in the Eastern Conference Final.
All right, what about the West before I give mine?
I think Dallas is going to beat Winnipeg as much as I would like to see the Winnipeg Jets win. I just think Jake Ottinger is just playing a little bit better, and they're getting healthy bodies, and I think Dallas can prove to go on a road and win in Winnipeg rather than Winnipeg going into Dallas and win. I know what the season series is, but the playoffs are a different animal, and Dallas is playing a lot better right now. And give me the Vegas Golden Knights. I'm still not sold on the Edmonton Oilers goaltending. Calvin Picker, Stuart Skinner. If they're gonna have lapses in their game, the Vegas Golden Knights are gonna take advantage of it. And that D-core and Aiden Hill has done it already. I know you have 97. I know you have 29, but Vegas has more depth, and Bruce Cassidy is not afraid to roll 4 lines, unlike something Jim Hiller was afraid to do.
Gee, it's not to be much of a fun podcast if we're agreeing with each other entirely.
I mean, I can change a pick if you want.
No, you have to be honest. This is all about honesty.
Right, exactly.
We have to have our morals. We have to be honest. We can't just say, oh, well, it's for the sake of the show. We have to be honest. Now, I have no faith in Toronto getting further, strictly because I still think that they are a soft team. I know they have a new head coach. I know they still have the same core players. You know how you have to lose in order to learn how to win.
Yeah.
As much as they've done the losing, I don't think they've actually learned the lessons that they need. So they overmatched Ottawa, not because Ottawa was, not that Ottawa didn't belong, but they overmatched Ottawa. If they would have gone up against a better team, if they would have gone up against a more legit playoff team, I don't think Toronto gets out of the first round. So I will agree, Toronto in that series, Toronto's there, but Florida's going to beat them. Florida will absolutely beat them in that series. Washington, I can't see them losing to Carolina in this series. I just can't. Carolina didn't scare me against the Devils. They don't have the scoring. If you told me Carolina had the scoring, then it's
maybe they do, and we just don't realize it and recognize it that they actually do have it.
Well, it's Rod Brindamore's system. They don't really score much. I don't think that they can get past the Capitals in terms of from an offensive standpoint. It'll be a low-scoring series, but the Caps are going to win that. And then out in the West, I mean, Dallas. If Dallas gets back Heiskanen and Robertson by Game 3, and it could be earlier than that.
It could be Game 1 for all we know.
Right. If they get them back, I mean, that's Dallas' series to win. Jake Ottinger, if there's anything that we know, Jake Ottinger has stolen Connor Hellebuck's job as Team USA's #1 goalie for the Olympics.
Okay? I mean, look, I'm not going to... This is where we can disagree, and we can have some fun on this podcast. I'm not sold on that yet. Like, talk to me in maybe 4 months. Okay, we can have a different discussion. But I think it's still Connor Hellebuck's net.
I think this series will show it is Ottinger has taken it from Hellebuck. Now, I'm not saying that, if Ottinger has one bad game in the Olympics, that they don't go back to Hellebuck and ride the hot hand or something. Obviously, all that can happen. But this, to me, that torch has not been passed. It has been taken by Ottinger.
We'll see. Maybe that's a motivating factor for Hellebuck in this series.
I mean, I doubt Hellebuck is thinking about the Olympics at this point, but you never know.
Hey, what about Anthony Stolarz? You never know, the Jersey kid.
Yeah. If Team USA is starting Anthony Stolarz in net, I think we got problems.
We got problems, exactly.
But and then the series that gives me pause actually is Edmonton, LA. I have no faith in Edmonton's goaltending, none. I have a ton of faith in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. However, Vegas is Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I have Vegas in my pre-playoff pool on NHL's gaming site. I have Vegas going all the way and winning the cup. I do not see Vegas losing to Edmonton. And I think it's going to set up a very interesting summer. Because if Edmonton goes out in the second round, Connor McDavid is eligible on July 1st for an extension. Okay? Now, does Connor McDavid say to himself and to the Oilers, I'm tired of all this. We're not in a great position. You still can't get a goalie. You still can't build a credible defense. You still can't build depth scoring. I know Leon Draisaitl signed, but I can't take it anymore. Now, I don't know whether he wants out or not. I would guess he does not want out.
No, but I don't think he's going to sign July 1st. I think he's going to do what Leon did and wait till like August.
Well, but that was also because of the Ken Holland leaving and
right. But I don't think he's going to do it right away. Like I personally think, yeah, July 1st is going to come, and the big question is, oh well, where's the McDavid extension? I think he's going to take his time with it.
It's certainly possible that he takes his time. I'm telling you right now, if they go out in the second round, he might make the Oilers sweat and say, I'm not signing an extension right now. I want to see how we do next year. And then, you'll have whatever it is, 7 days before the free agency, after the season ends, before, having the potential to talk with every team.
Well, I'll give you one here on our Blue Line Blast. I'm thinking Connor Bedard, the other Connor in the league, takes it all the way because he's eligible to sign an extension July 1st. I don't think he's going to do it. I think he's going to take it all the way to the end of the season.
I mean, is he going to have UFA rights or is he
No, he's still on RFA, but I'm saying I don't. We've all seen these RFAs automatically sign their extensions like right away. I think he might wait to see what this Chicago Blackhawks team's really all about before he commits to a long-term extension.
That's certainly possible. I don't know. With Bedard, I get the feeling that I'll agree with you that I don't see him wanting to stay in Chicago long-term if they don't turn things around quickly. But I also see him actually liking being the face of a franchise, trying to be the one to revitalize it. So I can see him, maybe he doesn't go the max 8 years. I can see him saying, listen, I'm going to give you like 5 years instead of the typical.
So go Matthews, then Matthews style, like a 5-year deal.
Yeah, instead of the typical bridge deal of 2 to 3 years, I can see him doing like the 4 or 5. That way, he gives them a little bit of time. He gives himself a little bit of time, but he doesn't go quite the bridge option.
Well, speaking of time, that's a great segue when you mentioned time. Do you think Marc-Andre Fleury's holding on to time a little bit long? He said he's supposed to retire at the end of the year. Minnesota season came to an end at the end of the Vegas Golden Knights. Great send-off, the handshake, the guys, his entire season. But he's doing it one more time. Him, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, all playing for Team Canada at the World Championships. Sid and Fleury, the Flower, one more time, riding it out one last time, a la John Cena. But this isn't a heel turn. This is actually going to be a good babyface run for these guys. And this is what you say about Team Canada. Though Fleury's probably not going to be on the Olympic team, which he won't be. Team Canada takes the World Championships seriously, and big names are going because they know what's coming. Team USA, on the other hand, not so much.
Well, look, with Fleury, I'm going to say it was the shortest retirement in NHL history.
Yes.
That is no disrespect to him. The Flower, phenomenal, deserves all his flowers, ironically enough. Pun intended. He deserves all the accolades. He hasn't played. He's never played in the World Championship.
No, he's never played.
If he wins gold, he'll be the first goalie to win triple gold, to join the triple gold club. I think he should have left it off with Minnesota. Let that be the final game. Because, with everything that was talked about, with all the emotions, I don't love the move, but, he's reuniting with Sid. They're bringing in Nathan. I mean, Connor Bedard turned them down. So, we'll see if that's a mistake in hindsight when it comes to Olympics and other things, but that's the topic for another day.
Yeah.
I think Team Canada, is Fleury going to start? The only way this makes sense is Fleury has to start and has to take them all the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's the fairy tale ending, right? That's like
if he's just going to ride backup, then this makes no sense.
Right, but I think he'll play a couple of games at least.
No, like he has to.
No, I understand. Play game 1 through the whole tournament. I agree with you. I 100% agree. Like, it doesn't make sense if he's just going to ride the bench.
Right. So, it'll be great. But his last game really should have been an NHL game, not an international game that most of the Leeds fans will not see because they're either going to be watching the playoffs or not invested in it because it's a completely different time zone and everything.
It's not like, look, I think this year with the Worlds, I said it before on Twitter, I say it again. This year it might be closer to best on best than we think because in normal times the World Championships are just not best on best. Because it coincides with the Stanley Cup playoffs. The rosters are going to be close to Olympic rosters, minus the guys that are hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Team Canada. It's a nice story, but look, the Flower, he's going to do what he wants. He even said, should I have announced that now? Look, he had a great send-off. I hope, for Canada's sake, they win and it's better. But you can't go out on a sour note because then what was those last couple of games in the NHL all about?
Right, and look, in terms of send-offs, I do want to give a shout-out to longtime New York Rangers, MSG Network's TV color analyst, Joe Micheletti, who very quietly retired. He announced his retirement after the season. He didn't want to take away any of Sam Rosen's deserved flowers and everything. Sam Rosen embarked on the retirement tour. Joe, very quiet guy, very private guy. He finally confirmed last week what a lot of people suspected was going to be the case, that he was also going to be retiring, giving the Rangers a completely new look in the TV broadcast booth. Maybe Fleury should have taken a page out of Joe's book on that, but I do want to give a shout out to Joe. Absolutely phenomenal guy. He spotted things on the ice during broadcast that just most people did not until he mentioned it. He was one of the best. I know that The Athletic every year runs a poll, a survey for both regional and national interest levels. And of how they feel each team's broadcasts are. And I know Sam and Joe were generally middle of the pack in their things. They deserved much higher than that. Joe was always phenomenal. I've had a personal relationship with Joe ever since I started my career. Absolutely phenomenal guy, both at the rink, away from the rink. And so I want to give him his flowers on that.
No, great guy. I mean, always a great guy around the rink. It's so knowledgeable, right? Just what he did on the Rangers broadcast. Even, you when you follow a certain team, you don't always get to see those other broadcasts. But when the Devils would play the Rangers preseason, they mix up the broadcast teams a little bit. Micheletti would be on. Same with the Islanders. Like he had an eye for the game. He was really good. Him and Sam Rosen did real good work together. And good on Joe, doing it quietly after Sam gets his flowers and gets his praise and accolades. And Joe Micheletti, one of the good color guys in the business, maybe underrated color guys in the business.
Great color guy, great.
Like I thought, and did he do national broadcasts at times?
Yeah, he did national broadcasts. So he started out doing some national games. I believe Dan Kelly was his first partner, actually. And he showed up completely unprepared. Joe actually tells a story in my very first book that I wrote, Unforgettable Rangers, Games and Moments from the Press Box. He showed up to his first game. He didn't even have a pen or paper or anything with him. And then he steps all over the first call and everything. It was a complete, utter disaster. And Kelly said to him afterwards, he said, "You do that again, I'll fire you." Joe came completely prepared after that. And, he worked with Howie Rose on Islander TV for a number of years. And then coming out of the lockout, he went to the Rangers side of things and joined up with Sam Rosen for 19 years. Just absolutely one of a kind, just absolutely one of a kind gentleman for Joe Micheletti.
Yeah, no, great. A lot of great broadcasters calling it quits. A lot of great players calling it quits here. This season's been a phenomenal season. We're only getting started, really, with the second round of Stanley Cup playoffs. And, the first round was just great. Internationally.
One of the best in recent memory.
Easily, and that was probably one of the best weekends. Game 7. I think a couple of years ago, somebody asked me this on Twitter, and maybe we can go from there, and if there's anything else we want to talk about. But somebody asked me this question. If this was one of the best weekends you remember, first rounds you remembered, and I said, I know a few years ago we had 3 Game 7s in the first round. That was pretty special, but I don't know if you're going to beat a weekend like we had, back-to-back nights like that.
Yeah, I think the weekend that you're referencing, didn't we have 3 Game 7s in one night?
Yeah, exactly. And then in the COVID bubble, we had Elimination Friday. It was 3 elimination games or 4 elimination games in a row. It was great.
Yeah, so look, there's nothing better than NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, especially round 1. Okay, there's a reason why it's always talked about on social media. Our sport's the best. Baseball was my sport throughout growing up and everything. Baseball's got nothing on the NHL when it comes to playoffs. Football's got nothing on them. Basketball's got nothing on them. Charles Barkley, Mr. Basketball, Mr. TNT, was going nuts during the game, during the Warriors game, was going nuts about the Game 7 going on in the NHL. This is not, random studio host saying, "Oh, hey, wait a second." This is Charles, Mr. Basketball, or Barkley going on about it.
Yeah.
So think about that for a minute, okay?
No, I remember I saw it on Twitter. They were saying
round and shove it because they got nothing on the NHL.
No, definitely not. No, 100%. And Barkley was during it, they were showing highlights. He's like, "Yo, McKinnon scored again," and I'm like, this dude does not give a crap does not care about the NBA right now. When the Oilers were doing their thing against LA, they were saying that, you had Shaq Hyman out there promoting. Look, the TNT guys, the cross promotion, everything that's going on. I think that's something that we gotta love in this sport, and I think we gotta to go from that, to wrap it up, here on the podcast. Obviously everything is starting to make waves now with that Hockey Canada stuff, right? The trial, the 2018, the 5 members of the team. The trial was set. There was obviously, if I'm getting this correct, there was a mistrial.
Yeah,
And
a
then
couple
went
days
back
in, there
on.
was a mistrial.
Yep, and now they're back presenting the evidence against the 5 players from that 2018 World Junior team with the alleged sexual assault. And it doesn't look good right now for these guys. It really doesn't.
Look, I'm not even going to get into the whole thing of, well, junior hockey in Canada has a bad reputation or has bad culture. That's been written about. Whether people want to complain about that or not, that's on them. I didn't play junior hockey. I've never played hockey. I'm not going to all of a sudden go try to pretend like I know what the culture is up in Canada for a bunch of 14-year-olds every year. I think it's foolhardy to think about that. But what these guys did, and the evidence is pretty overwhelming. What these guys did, even if there's something different to it, even if it's reprehensible, absolutely reprehensible, for them to have done to this poor woman what they did. And again, even if maybe it turned out a couple of the guys weren't involved, or if as the prosecution said, this trial is a case about consent. It's not a case about what happened. It's a case about consent. When a woman is inebriated beyond the point of anything, she is not able to give consent. Okay.
Right.
So, well, yes, her and Michael McLeod supposedly had a consensual hookup. Okay. What in the name of, I can't even say it on this podcast because we'll get in trouble with so many different agencies. Was McLeod thinking to all of a sudden start texting? And we know these texts exist because they've literally been submitted into evidence. Texting his teammates, being like, hey, do you want to come over for a threesome? Do you want to come over for an oral? Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah,
Like,
you don't put that on the open. You just don't do that.
Like, regardless of whether she consented or not, and it does not seem like she consented, okay? And, she was also way too inebriated to even consent. But let's just say there's factors that we don't know yet when it comes to that. As a normal, decent human being, like, Jim, we're both in our 30s, okay?
Right.
You meet a girl, you meet a woman. You go home with the woman, whether her place, your place, hotel, whatever. You're not then texting your boys being like,
no,
hey, you want to come over and and take your turn. Like,
no, you don't do that. That's not okay. That's just not okay in today's society. It's not okay, period.
Yeah, that's never
you don't
okay.
do that.
Like, yeah, okay. So she had consensual relations with McLeod. Okay, what is wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
And yes, what is wrong with the other players for saying, okay, yeah, we want to come through? But what is wrong with Michael McLeod for, what has to go wrong in to be like, oh, yeah, hey, I just had my share. Now I want to share this with my teammates. I cannot, for the life of me, I cannot understand what was going through his head.
I can't. I'm not going to even try to be going to his head on this. But I just see all the evidence from this thing, and I say to myself, very disgusting, very disturbing. What happened that night with that team, with those players. A lot of guys, a lot of careers ruined. Especially a lot of teams ruined because of this. Guys, missing key players. Like, let's be honest, the hockey side of this and the human side of this thing. This woman's life is ruined, and you have to say, what kind of person does this stuff? And it's pretty damning evidence and vulgar and a lot of things. I mean, it's out there. It's similar to the stuff that McMahon did. And you can go read about that too, because that's just as bad as this, if not worse. So, again, trials going on with Hockey Canada. It doesn't look good for these players right now. A lot more days ahead. A lot more things to be revealed and written about. And we'll be talking about it here on the Blue Line Blast podcast. Stanley Cup playoffs rolling through. Lots of great hockey action to talk about on the ice as well as off the ice. Jim Biringer, Matthew Blittner. Again, get it up on YouTube, Blue Line Blast podcast. Check it out. We'll be back again next week. Take care.